Hello, Algebra. We're going to talk about square root functions today, but before we do that, I wanted to review what are the three functions that we have learned about thus far. We spent an entire chapter on the first two and a partial chapter on the third. That's right, linear. Remember when we graph those, we get a line. We talked about quadratics. Graph those, we get a parabola, like a U shape. And then this chapter, we talked about exponential. And that was a sharp increase or decrease and approaches the line. Well, today we are going to add another one, the square root function. And that is a function whose rule contains a variable under a square root sign. So some examples and things that it would look like are exactly this. See how the x is underneath the square root? Here's another example. Yep, x is under the square root. It can look many ways. Another one, x is under the square root. That's how you can quickly see what a square root function is, and it typically is a curve like that where it goes up. So like the other sections, we first learned to evaluate with information. So they said in example 1, the function y equals 8 square root x gives the speed in feet per second of an object in free fall after falling x feet. Okay, so the y, that's your speed. And the x is how far it's falling. So A says find the speed. Okay, so we're trying to find y of an object in free fall after it has fallen 16 feet. Okay, so that means that that's my x. So we go ahead and grab the function they gave us and we put in 16 for x. Now remember, when you're evaluating these, there's a multiplication between these two. And we know the square root of 16 is 4. So my answer is 32. And what would the unit be? You notice it says speed. Speed. Feet per second. You can abbreviate that like that. The slash is per. So feet per second. All done. Okay, another one, I'd again recommend just pausing the video, doing it, and making sure yours line up with mine. So I'm going to grab the y equals 8 root x, but this time it says it's fallen 20 feet. And as you'll see, it doesn't come out even, which is why they're having you attempt it and round it to the nearest tenth. So when you grab the calculator, oh shoot, I'm going to pause you for a second. I forgot to grab my calculator and I will need it. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. So I've got the calculator now. So I'm going to do the square root of 20 first. So 20, and there's my square root sign, times 8. I get that. And again, it says to the nearest tenth, which is the first place. So I look at the place after it, and oh, it's bigger than 5 or bigger. So I'm going to move this one up to an 8. So 35.8. And the unit is still speed. And we're done with that. Okay, now if you guys remember, when we talked about square roots before, we talked about domain, and when we say domain, we mean which values class? That's right, the x values. But remember, under square root, we cannot have what in this under the square root, at least when we're working with real numbers. That's right, we can't have a negative number under the square root sign. Okay, so when we're working with, that's imaginary. So when we're working with real numbers, we need to figure out what the domain is. What are the possible values this can be so that I don't get a negative? And the way that you do that is always to take everything that's underneath the square root sign and set it equal so that it say, okay, what numbers will I get if it's greater than or equal to 0? Because that's what this has to be under here. It has to be bigger than, it can be 0, because square root of 0 is 0, but it can't be anything less than 0. So then you just have an equation that you can go ahead and solve. And you have x is greater than or equal to 4. That is your domain. Any number that's 4 or bigger will give you a positive number in here. Okay, so we go over here and we try the same thing. I would pause it if I were you. Try it, see if you get the same thing as me. But again, you take everything under the square root, not just part of it. Okay, if there was a plus 3 way out here, you leave that alone. But you take anything under the square root. And again, you do what? You want to see when it is greater than or equal to 0. So you could do this two ways. You could distribute the 4x through the 4 through and get 4x plus 12 and solve. But since it's 4 times that whole thing, I can also undo that 4 right away. Either way will work. This just saves a bit. Subtract 3 from both sides. And my answer is any number that is greater than or equal to a negative 3. Will give you a positive under here. So there's that. And then the last thing is how to graph them. There are patterns and things you can look at for graphing, but we're just going to keep it simple here and just do our little XY charts. We're not going to do a ton of graphing, but I do want you to always feel comfortable to just go ahead and whip up a XY chart and figure it out. But before you can do that, I don't want to just randomly pick these because I got to make sure my domain, what we just figured out, gives me real numbers. So before you do anything, you're going to want to take this and do what we just did and see what values can x be. So we're going to add 3 to both sides. Okay, so x is greater than or equal to 3. So I'm not going to want to pick values here like 2, 1, or 0. Because those are not greater than or equal to 3. Okay, so I'm going to pick 3 for sure. And then I'm going to kind of choose wisely here because I see it's a square root. And I know there's certain things that are perfect squares. 1, 4, 9, 16, 25. When I take the square root of any of those numbers, it comes out nice and even. So I'm going to kind of use some foresight here and think, because I know 3 minus 3 is going to give me a 0 in here. That'll be nice. Well, what does x have to be in order to get a 1? Put a 4 there. And if I wanted to get a 9 under here, what would this have to be? 12. And if I want to get a 16 under here, what's that have to be? 19. Always 3 more, isn't it? So let's go ahead. If we plug in 3 minus 3, it is 0, and the square root of 0 is 0. 4 minus 3 is 1, and the square root of 1 is 1. 12 minus 3 is 9. Square root of 9 is 3. And 19 minus 3 is 16, and the square root of 16 is 4. So that works well. So you got to look at your range here. You're going to have a different level going on here. 1, 2, 3, 4. This is going to go all the way up to 19. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, and 20. And that's fine. That's no problem that they're a little off. So 3, 0. I'm going to graph that. 4, 1. 12, 3, and 19, 4. So you can see what we got going here. There's your curve, your square root curve. Okay, now if you did this and you didn't pick these nice numbers, what you'll get is just some decimals, and that's okay too. You can just kind of round your decimals and put them on here, but it's just nice when everything works out well like that. Let's try one more. Again, I would pause it, try it, and see if it works out. Okay, what can x be? What can my range be? Like we did up here. Well, there's nothing to solve. The only thing under here is x. So x has to be greater than or equal to 0. So I'm going to do 0. I'm going to do 1. And look, it's the only thing under the square root. So I'm going to pick any of these lovely perfect squares up here. 0, 1, 4, 9. And I'll do 16. So actually I heard the doorbell and I think I have to go sign for something. Hang on. All right, it was a mailman. Most excitement we get around here these days, isn't it? All right, so we've got the square root of 0. Square root of 0 is 0 times 3 is 0 plus 4. We have 3 square root of 1 plus 4. Square root of 1 is 1 times 3 is 3 plus 4 is 7. We have 3 square root of 4 plus 4. Square root of 4 is 2 times 3 is 6 plus 4 is 10. Square root of 9 is 3 times 3 is 12. I'm sorry, that is not 12. Times 3 is 9 plus 4 is 13. And we'll do our last one. Square root of 16 is 4 times 3, that's 12, plus 4 is 16. So our x's go up to 16. Oh, and our y's both do. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. So 0, 4, 1, 7, 4, 10. Oh, that was 2, wasn't it? That should have been over here. Not there. And 4, 10. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. And 9, 13. 2, 4, 6, 8, 9. And 10. Right here. Am I doing that right? I should have labeled these. Okay, let me verify. 0, 4, 1, 7, 4, 10, 9, 13. I think I went a little over there. And 16, 16. So yeah, there we go. It's kind of a little off. I think my little slashes weren't the best there. So there you go. Oops, my squeaky chair again. So we are all set. I hope that goes well. Feel free to rewatch any that you need help with. Take care. God bless.